Today's lesson is from Genesis chapter 37, verses 1 through 4 and 12 through 28. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I'm going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me." Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?" "They have moved on from here," the man answered. "I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal has devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern where, here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. This is the word of the Lord.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that host all dressed in white. God's gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like the Israelite. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. Looks like the band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. If you don't believe I've been redeemed, God's gonna trouble the water. Just follow me down to Jordan's stream. God's gonna trouble the water.
Now, I might be the resident theologian here at Dranesville, but there are many more. You're all theologians. Try to discern God's will for you in your life and those around you. And today, discernment is to help you in that role. And the short answer is that our best theological insights are forged in our abandonments, problems, and challenges. Now, if you read the book of Genesis, the early chapters up to chapter 36, God is an active participant who walks and talks with people. Most of the characters know exactly what God is up to. They receive explicit messages from the Lord. However, from Genesis 37 on, God becomes a hidden mover of history. He works mainly through dreams, visions, and interpreters. The characters after chapter 37, they're left to figure out what on earth is going on in my life. Well, here in our text, Joseph is the focal point of God's work on earth. He is the star of Genesis. If it were not for him, the book would not have that narrative power. Joseph was the father's favorite. It was his father's favorite, and he had dreams about his brother bowing down to him. So his brothers got fed up, and as we read, they sold him into slavery, and he ended up in Egypt. And he worked his way up to Potiphar's house, but then got thrown into prison because somebody lied about him. Even there, God was with him. His ability to read dreams, organize, be an administrator, eventually got him to be the second in charge in the empire of Egypt. Years later, his brothers show up looking for food during famine. And Joseph kind of unsettles them with hidden kindness. He is the chosen one. In a way, he is Christ's figure. In our text, he hits a real snag. His brother wants to kill him, but end up selling him as a slave. So I want to ask you a question. How many of us have been confused trying to discern what God is doing in our lives? And how many of us were told and would believe that we have been chosen, we're beloved, set apart for something good, but only to be thrown into the pit of life? This one you have to remember about who you are. This one. Every believer is, in a sense, is a Joseph, because he reflects Christ. You are the beloved, the chosen one, given a promise and a purpose to do the work of God. Bible says Christ, the living Lord, lives in you. You have to remember that. You always have to remember that. But that very calling makes you a target. Like Joseph, believers are often misunderstood, resented, or opposed. Like Joseph, you are sometimes abandoned by the very people who are supposed to help you. Instead of protecting you, they throw you into the pit. Like Joseph, you are asked to remain faithful in seasons where nothing looks like blessings, where obedience is quiet, unseen, and most of all, unrewarded. There's a joke going on in our volunteer system. We're going to raise your salary, We're going to raise your salary threefold for what you do. You're not going to be rewarded for all that you do for the Lord. And like Joseph, the promise does not evaporate just because you get stuck down in the pit. And here's a big kicker. The vindication comes, but it doesn't come on your timetable. It comes on God's timetable. This is a pattern stamped onto the life of everyone who carries God's call. You're chosen, you're persecuted, you're abandoned, faithful in obscurity, and finally vindicated in God's timing rather than our own. Now, many people in our congregation shared that you had pre-Genesis 36 moments in your life. Everything made sense. It was as if God was speaking to you at every turn. You had those moments. But most of us now are in the post-Genesis 36 moments. You just can't figure it out. You are confused. And you're tempted to be bitter, cynical, doubtful, impatient. Some people just walk away because they feel abandoned. And who will blame them if their family constantly throws them under the bus? We get stuck. We don't go forward. So how do we cope when we're down in the pit, when we cannot understand what's going on, even though we've been given this precious promise, this precious calling in our life? How do we cope with that? Well, according to Professor Sonia Wong, Joseph's story contains four interpreters. Four. The general narrative, the narrator, it's called the narrator, the butler, the brothers, and the Joseph himself. And I'll explain the first three because they are the most common. This is the theology that most people encounter. We have to be aware of them, but always know that you are Joseph. Always know you're Joseph. God calling you to be Josephs. The narrator offers a general theology that runs through chapter 39. For four separate times, the narrator states that the Lord was with Joseph, crediting all his successes, first with Potiphar's, then in prison, then with Egypt, on pure divine favor rather than Joseph's own effort. This is a general grace and the mercy of God. This view is a placeholder to remind you that when you're in the pit or in the Potiphar's house or in prison, that God is with you. It's a placeholder. It's an encouraging reminder until all things are revealed. That's why, as a church, on every Sunday, we hold each other's hand, and we sing grace to you, even though some of you might be walking in the valley of shadow of death. We still sing this song because it is a general placeholder to remind us to not get discouraged. But that's not the totality. The second view is the butler's view. What happened was that, I don't know why, but Joseph sees his brother, recognizes him, but his brothers don't recognize him because he's like Egyptianized, right? So out of spite or whatever, he puts the money back into their sack as he gives them their food. And as they go back to Canaan, they find the cup and this money in their sack, and they're like overwhelmed. And the butler says this, "Your God must have put treasure in your bag." The butler view, we do this all the time. We spin it so that it kind of fits. It sounds good for us. We spin things, but it might not be the truth. We all do that.